It's hard to believe it's already that time of the year, but this soybean field behind me is gonna be combined today. Now I personally think these soybeans are just a little bit too wet to combine. If I take one here, crack it open, grab the soybean, I pop it in my mouth and it crunches really easy in my back teeth. So like I said, I don't think they're ready. Dad thinks they're ready, so here he comes with the combine. I got the header trailer over there. We're gonna see how wet these soybeans are. If they're anything below 14%, we'll combine this whole 150 acre field today. So we think we got everything programmed on the combine right. Just about to make the first little cut into the soybeans for 2025. So now that we've gone a little ways from the front of the field, we shut the combine off. We can see exactly what things are looking like inside here.
You're not getting some of these some of the green ones are coming off, are they?
Now I jumped out of the combine. I'm gonna follow behind and see if I find any soybeans that the combine isn't thrashing out of the pods. That way we can get everything fine-tuned and ready to rock before we get the rest of the equipment out here. So we've gone a little ways now. The sample inside the grain tank looks plenty clean. The issue is the soybeans are testing right around 15%. And once you get over 13% at the elevator, you start to take a dock. If we wait much more time, these soybeans are gonna start getting drier and drier. So we're trying to decide if we should keep harvesting or if we should just call it quits, but I think we're gonna make a little bit further before we decide that. We've completed an acre out of this field. I got a little grain sample inside, an old coffee can. It's testing in the combine right around 15%. Dad locked me out of the truck. So we're gonna head back to the farm. We got our grain tester. We're gonna see if that matches up when we run the sample through the tester. $14.2, that one came out too. Now I'll run another test just so we have two comparisons. These green ones, these are the ones we don't like to see because these a lot higher moisture and these can cause a lot of issues when we start putting them in the bin. Second test also comes back at 14.2% moisture. Looks like we're heading back to the field. So I'm gonna be hauling loads today from that soybean field. The first load is actually gonna be going to town because we are one of the first farmers in the area that are taking out soybeans. The local soybean plant is offering a 25-cent premium per bushel. So rather than going ahead and storing these bushels away in our bins, which we plan on using all the bin storage anyway because we're having a really good crop this year, I'm gonna be hauling these loads to town. It's funny to say this as I'm driving our semi, but I'm currently in the works of studying and preparing for my commercials driver's license, so my CDL. That way I can haul big trucks and trailers like this over the road commercially. Right now I have absolutely zero intention of doing that. The only thing is I thought, well, while I'm sitting here during harvest and basically there's a lot of downtime in between loads and whatnot, I'm gonna study, have some flashcards on my phone, start studying for my CDL. So the goal is, by the time harvest is done, I'll go in and take my CDL test and be a fully licensed CDL driver. One thing nice, starting with this field we're combining, these soybeans aren't very big and bushy. They're very much upright and they're not leaning over. Sometimes when they lean over a ton in the middle of the rows, they're tough to combine and it makes it a little bit tricky with this being day number one. But this variety that we're harvesting here, these are nice, easy ones to combine. First load, emptying out. So inside the combine here, it said we harvested 7,100 bushels, or 100 pounds, 7,100 pounds rather. And then on the grain cart, there's a scale as well, and that one says 6,400 pounds. So this is why we're wanting to take one load to town, that we can kind of calibrate everything, get everything dialed in. Since we don't have a scale back at the farm, we'll just be dumping straight into the bin. Right now you're negative, which is this way. We want it this way.
You're gonna get more dirt.
No, this way and up. You gotta raise that head up. Well, Dad and I were talking there. He's afraid we're getting a little bit too much dirt in the grain sample just because of the pitch of the soybean header. So he's trying to flirt with that, see if he can get that figured out. I'm gonna bring this load to town. All I have to say is we're gonna have a lot of loads to go to town this fall because these soybeans are yielding, this field in particular, 75 bushels to the acre, which is amazing. Look who's the only one here. Me. That's a good sign to see, because sometimes when harvest really gets rolling, there'll be about 30, 40 trucks sitting here waiting to dump. Another reason, I'm glad we're starting early. I got our receipt for that load we hauled in. Moisture, 13.6, 880 and a third bushels. I will say I got a little bit docked on the moisture, but it's honestly a good thing because we have so many acres of soybeans we need to harvest, and with only one combine, we need to make sure we're staying efficient because otherwise the soybeans will dry out a ton. So now we're gonna bring the semi back to the field and see if Dad wants us to either bring another load to town or start loading them at the bins. Initially, between Dad and I, we had contracted about 10,000 bushels of soybeans to go to town this fall, but now that these beans are yielding even higher than what we were expecting, we're realizing we're gonna need to move about another 5,000 to 10,000 bushels to town so we have enough room in the bin. So for today's purposes, all the soybeans we're gonna be harvesting from here on out for today are all gonna go to town unless they close early on us. Now I made my way back in the combine. We're just gonna be setting the yield adjustment since we hauled in our first load to town. Now we know what the actual yield was that the combine's reading, and it was off about 4%. So we're gonna make some adjustments here by doing some smaller loads, loading it into the grain cart, just to get zeroed in on our actual yield. The grain sample there in the truck looked good. And since this field is all one variety of soybeans, there's not a lot of adjustments Dad's gonna have to make on the combine now that it's set for this variety of soybeans. Although there is one spot over here where there used to be a pasture, and the soybeans are quite a bit greener, so we're ending up not gonna harvest those ones because they're too wet. We'll have to come back a different day to get them, and it looks like Mom's got me loaded now in the truck, so we'll head back to town. They got a pretty good chunk out of the field since the last time I was back here. It doesn't look like we'll be able to run super late tonight because there isn't a whole bunch of wind that's blowing right now. Without that wind, the dew will set up pretty quick here when the sun goes down on the soybean pods. So rather than these shelling open and the soybeans coming out super easily, they'll get a little dampness on them, then they won't shell out, so then we're basically done once that dew comes up. They're about to make another load for me on the semi. So Mom, day one of harvest.
Yep.
Is day one your favorite day, or is the last day your favorite?
The last day's my favorite
I knew
day.
that.
That was like a stupid question.
I knew you'd say that. See you next time. And off we go with the last load that's gonna go to town because they're gonna close here after this one. So in total, I think this is 4 or 5 loads I got brought into town today. We made a pretty good chunk out of this field. It's exciting. It's crazy to me that harvest has already started though. It feels like just yesterday I was out planting this field. I remember when we had planted this exact spot because I ran out of seed. But harvest is here. I would love for you to join me on this harvest journey. I really have no idea what the rest of the season's gonna look like. If you wanna follow along, hit that subscribe button down below. And with that, That's all I got from a high-tech farmer who's having significantly better yields than last year. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. We'll see ya in the next one.